March 19th has witnessed imperial collapses, fragile truces, sweeping reforms, and wars broadcast in real time. We'll travel from a burning delta in southern China to a glowing control room on Capitol Hill, tracing how power shifts and publics learn about it. Let's rewind. This is your This Day in History. On March 19, 1279, the Mongol Yuan fleet bottled up the last Song defenders at Yamen, sealing the fate of a 3-century-old dynasty. Song admirals chained their junks together to prevent desertion, sheltering the young Emperor Zhao Bing and thousands of loyalists on overcrowded decks. Mongol commander Zhang Hongfan sent fire ships draped in wet hides to smash through the barrier, their flames igniting rigging and powder stores in minutes. Facing capture, Chancellor Lu Shufu clasped the boy emperor and leapt overboard, an act later remembered as the dynasty's final gesture of loyalty. The estuary filled with shattered hulls and bodies, a maritime graveyard that contemporaries claimed stretched for miles down the Pearl River estuary. Kublai Khan's administrators swiftly imposed Yuan law across the south, integrating coastal trade routes that would feed his pan-Eurasian empire. On March 19, 1563, Catherine de' Medici coaxed Catholic grandees and Huguenot leaders into endorsing the Edict of Amboise, pausing France's first religious war. The compact granted limited worship rights to noble-led Protestant households and specified garrison towns, trying to balance conscience with crown authority. Louis, Prince de Conde, accepted the terms to secure amnesty for his followers, even as many militants doubted the monarchy's sincerity. Parisian magistrates registered the edict under protest, warning that toleration threatened civic order, yet lacking leverage to block the Queen Mother. Across the provinces, bailiffs pinned the edict to church doors and market crosses, instructing mayors to carve out zones where Protestants could quietly meet. The ceasefire held only briefly. Resentment simmered. But Amboise proved that negotiation could slow the cycle of massacre and retaliation. On March 19, 1649, England's Rump Parliament abolished the House of Lords, branding hereditary veto power useless and dangerous. The act declared sovereignty resided solely with the Commons, erasing centuries of bicameral precedent overnight. Army grandees saw the move as necessary to secure the fledgling republic after the king's execution and to keep legislation aligned with the new model army. Dispossessed peers withdrew to country estates, some plotting royalist risings, while others quietly complied to avoid sequestration. Pamphleteers flooded London with tracts over whether ancient constitution or divine order had been shattered beyond repair. For a decade, legislation would flow from a single chamber, redefining legitimacy until the Restoration resurrected the Lords in 1660. On March 19, 1812, delegates meeting in Cadiz adopted the Spanish Constitution, La Pepa, while Napoleon's troops besieged them from the mainland. The charter affirmed national sovereignty, separation of powers, and universal male suffrage for citizens in both Iberia and the overseas empire. American-born deputies insisted that the empire's peoples shared equal citizenship, foreshadowing independence demands back home. Inside the besieged port, crowds rang bells and shouted, "Viva la Pepa!" celebrating a document they hoped would outlive wartime improvisation. Soldiers copied excerpts to carry into the field, casting the campaign against Napoleon as a fight for both nation and rights. Although Ferdinand VII abolished the charter upon his return, its ideals kept resurfacing in every Spanish and Latin American revolution that followed. On March 19, 1865, Confederate General Joseph E. Johnston ambushed a wing of William T. Sherman's army near Bentonville, North Carolina. Union 14th Corps hastily formed a hook-shaped line using rail fences and pine thickets to blunt repeated assaults. Field hospitals filled barns and porches with groaning casualties as surgeons worked through the night by lamplight. By dusk, Union reinforcements under Slocum and Howard arrived, outflanking Johnston and forcing his men back toward Mill Creek. Johnston ordered a withdrawal across hastily repaired bridges, destroying wagons so Sherman could not pursue rapidly. Today, the preserved battlefield reminds visitors how close the war was to ending when this last major Confederate offensive collapsed. On March 19, 1932, Australia opened the Sydney Harbour Bridge, a steel arch linking the growing metropolis after nearly a decade of construction. Chief Engineer J.J.C. Bradfield's crews had driven 6 million rivets into the twin arches, synchronizing work from opposite shores. Governor Sir Philip Game prepared to cut the ribbon when a New Guard cavalryman famously slashed it first, stealing the moment before police intervened. By evening, the arch glowed with electric lights, symbolizing Australia's confidence despite Depression-era hardship. The span immediately eased congestion, letting workers and goods flow between the North Shore and city wharves without long ferry queues. Over decades, the bridge turned into a civic stage, hosting fireworks, Aboriginal rights marches, and centennial walks high above the water. On March 19, 1944, Hitler launched Operation Margaret, ordering German troops to occupy Hungary and prevent Regent Miklos Horthy from exiting the war. Panzer divisions drove straight into Budapest, arresting officials suspected of negotiating with the Allies. Envoy Edmund Wiesenmeyer forced Horthy to appoint a collaborationist government under Dom Stojai, stripping the regent of real power. Adolf Eichmann's special unit arrived days later to register, ghettoize, and deport Hungary's Jews at terrifying speed. Resistance circles tuned illegal radios, realizing the occupation tied Hungary's fate to a collapsing Reich. Today, memorial shoes along the Danube testify to the deportations and massacres unleashed by that day's takeover. On March 19, 1962, France and the Algerian Provisional Government implemented the Evian Accords, ending 8 years of colonial war. A noon radio broadcast declared a ceasefire, prompting celebrations in Algerian towns and weary relief among French conscripts. European settlers, uncertain of their future, rushed to ports, beginning an exodus that would reshape cities like Marseille. FLN units emerged from Maquis camps, turning toward the political struggle of building a sovereign Algerian state. Hardline organization Armée Secrète OAS cells rejected the deal, launching a violent spiral meant to derail the transition. French and Algerian voters soon ratified the accords, cementing March 19th as Algeria's Victory Day. On March 19, 1979, the U.S. House of Representatives went live on C-SPAN, inviting cable viewers into daily floor debates for the first time. Journalist Brian Lamb opened the inaugural broadcast by promising unfiltered coverage, no commentary, and wall-to-wall public affairs. Curious viewers gathered around department store TVs, surprised by the mix of lofty speeches and procedural minutiae. Strict rules kept cameras fixed, showing whoever had the floor while preserving the chamber's decorum. The feed soon empowered activists, teachers, and insomniacs alike, creating a new expectation of legislative transparency. On March 19, 2003, President George W. Bush addressed the nation to announce the invasion of Iraq after a 48-hour ultimatum expired. Networks cut to maps of the Persian Gulf as Bush described coalition strikes aimed at disarming Saddam Hussein of alleged weapons of mass destruction. Minutes later, cruise missiles and stealth aircraft targeted Baghdad, while armored columns crossed from Kuwait under green night vision glare. Worldwide protests flared, warning that toppling a regime might prove easier than stabilizing the region that followed. Pentagon briefers outlined a rapid shock and awe plan, reflecting confidence that combat would end swiftly, even as long-term plans remained hazy. From imperial tides to televised wars, March 19th reminds us that power is always contested and always observed. Until tomorrow. This was This Day in History.